Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
So welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show we have Brian Sloan from AutoBlow. Brian, we've had you on the show a few times, but I think you wanted to share something particularly problematic that you recently experienced. Why don't you tell us a little bit about AutoBlow again?
Yeah, AutoBlow is I make automatic pleasure machines for men.
So it's a machine and it connects to the internet. You do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, syncs with videos. It's a high-tech pleasure device for men. I've been doing that for 16.
Yeah. So this is actually a fairly timely piece because you're talking a lot about the tariffs. Yeah. So in terms of a massive failure, it sounds like you landed right in the middle of one.
Yeah, it was. I think, looking back, I've been doing this for 16 years. This has been the most challenging thing that we've had to deal with, and that included COVID. So this has been really worse in many ways than COVID. And I think now that I finally got past sort of the potentially business killing section of the 145%, I think I'm feeling like a post-traumatic stress from that because there was no time to process that as it was happening. It was just stressful. And I've sort of realized, why do I feel down these last few days? And I think it's just the stress of having the 5 weeks of uncertainty every day, waking up, checking the news, talking about it. It's very stressful. And for not just for me, but I think for thousands and thousands of businesses, we're on the edge of a potential financial ruin.
Yeah, so this is business killing. So why don't you tell me the whole story, from stem to stern? What did you hear, and what were you expecting, and then what exactly happened when you were basically shipping stuff from China vast majority of the time?
Yeah, I think there's a misnomer, I think, with a lot of Americans that people who manufacture in China, like you say, they just ship things from China. It's like, no, they have business partners there that are very highly skilled in all of the important areas related to their product niche. And in our case, I lived in China for 10 years and I developed a relationship with one factory in particular, and I grew the business with them. We can give them a kind of 80% prototype of our stuff and they will take it to the finish line in a way like no one else can do that. And so we built our business with them. When, just so people understand what 145% tariffs mean, we were a duty-free category, some kind of massager category. And so we paid what we paid for the product. And 145% means the entire cost of your product plus half of the cost of your product. So if you make something for $50, it would cost $75 in taxes to import the thing, whereas it previously cost $0. That lasted for 5 weeks. And so that meant many things. It meant, for example, that our wholesale business with every store and chain and distributor that we sell to in America completely stopped. Actually, it didn't completely stop. That was the stressful part. It didn't stop until the end. I decided not to raise our prices, even though our landed costs were going to go up in another when our container landed. So it means that we were selling to wholesalers below our new landed cost. And so that was bad for us because I didn't know, we didn't land things at the cost. But if we were going to land things at the cost, we'd have been generating the money to pay for the duties that are due when you import things. For example, one of our containers cost $200,000. It was going to cost us $300,000 upfront to import the container. That doesn't make any sense. Like the math doesn't work.
$350,000, right? Something like that.
Right. 240. Right. So it doesn't make sense that people would. We had this cash. We're more profitable than maybe many other companies, but most people don't just have our margins and they don't have this amount of cash sitting around. So first, it would mean that I was taking a risk that in order to continue selling to the retailers, we were selling below our new landed cost, thinking, it'll go away. And I had to guess, when is that going to go away? We sent a container that was arriving actually May 28th. So we skated right through it in that we were still selling not at a great price because now we're going to have to pay 30%, but we never had to land a container at 145% duties. But we had to plan for it every day. It's like almost falling off a horse. Like you're about to fall off the horse. You don't know if you're going to fall off the horse. And it was just living every day like that. It was actually very stressful. And so now what it means is that our cost on our invoices will go up 30%. 30%, it doesn't make any sense. We can't possibly make relatively low cost electronics in America, but 30% we can deal with. We will pass it on to our customers, and we raised our prices 13 or 15% with our retailers and distributors in the United States. And we made all the Canadians who used to conveniently buy from us in the United States, we made them order from us in China because it doesn't make any sense for them to buy from us. And they don't like that because they were used to buying, a chain in Canada would say, give me 24 auto blows. Great, that's easy. But I'm not shipping them 24 from China because each export costs $500 or $600 in fees and whatever. So now they need to order, thousands more dollars of product each time. They don't like it, but I told them what can I do? So everyone also then comes to us like, oh, you're kind of like the bad guys. It's like, we're not the bad guys. There's a misunderstanding of what it means for your costs to suddenly increase. And then there's a kind of not a clear understanding between one's customers who should eat the cost. Do we just become a less profitable company for your sake, or do we raise our price and then you have to raise your price, or who eats it? Somewhere along the line, someone's going to eat all this cost. And it seems it's a little bit for everybody. So
the common understanding is that China eats it, right? But that's complete garbage.
No, this is it doesn't make any sense. No, I went to our factory when the first tariffs were like 10% or 20%. I said, hey guys, can we do anything? Everyone probably went to their supplier like, hey, can we do a little something? And they were like, no. And I totally respect that because, we argue with them over 10 cents and 20 cents and $1. If we're making 10,000 of something and we can save $1 per piece, we've done all kinds of engineering tricks already to save 50 cents a piece. We make $5,000 more on 10,000 piece order. Then when it became 145%, they said, Brian, we don't even make 20% margin. I wish we made 20% even on your entire order. So no, you're not going to come to us for that. So, and also this idea that China, the country, is involved in some way in the individual businesses. It would be like the same way as describing Americans, like switch it the other way. They said, well, America's making more money on this or that. Okay, a country is not a person. It doesn't make any sense. I'm dealing with a company the same way. If that company was located in America, let's pretend they have a factory, there's some guys, they have an assembly line, they source your stuff, they engineer for you. It's just some guys. It's just a company of people. So the country has very little to do with this X-Toy factory that we use in China. Pretty much nothing to do with it.
What's the solution here aside from? I mean, so I think the conservative idea would be that a duty free ability to import massagers is. I'm trying to play devil's advocate, and the argument is so specious and ridiculous that it's almost ridiculous to make. If I'm trying to quote unquote punish China for dumping 5-cent shirts on us for $2 through Shein or something like that, what's the solution? Is there any solution, or has this supply chain been so built up and so accreted that there's no way around this anymore?
Yeah, look, the supply chain is how it is, and there's a reason that things have gone that way. In America, I think the things that people would want to build here are things that make sense to build here, given the cost structure of our high quality of living and how much it costs to do that, to have air conditioning for everybody and all the things that we've grown, 80-inch flat screen TVs and all the things people have grown accustomed to. It doesn't make sense to make low cost things in America. There's not enough profit. It's not like a great business. The people that run, for example, the sex toy factories in China, most of them are not living large. They're living like a middle class, upper middle class kind of lifestyle in China. They're not like driving Ferraris around the streets. Okay. It's a hard business with low margins. And, for example, the motor that goes into a product like a sex toy, for a vibrator, for a woman's product, those motors are like $1, $2, maybe ours, 5, 6, 7, it depends, 10 if it's brushless. This is a very low cost. The kind of motors that you get made in America are not for things that you only use for a few years. Okay, you could make a motor here, maybe that in aerospace, medical, pumps for something in the hospital that's going to pump stuff into your blood. That thing needs to work. It needs to be super precise. Look, if I think our things are high quality, but guess what? If it breaks, I could have gotten higher quality everything in our product, and if it made it like never break. But instead, if we have a rate of products that break, we can afford to give people a new product. But if you make a motor like that in America, it would be so good that it would be too good for the application. For the price that you'd possibly sell it for. You can't have things in hospitals breaking, but you can have a toy breaking because you can afford to give someone a new toy. First, that's one of the reasons that you can't make this cheap stuff in America. The second, this stuff that was coming overseas from Shine and from Temu and AliExpress, one of the main issues, nothing. I don't know that things were being dumped on Americans in as much as there was a problem with the postal treaty. And I don't know, this was in one article somewhere. China is, to my understanding, is still classified as a kind of developing nation in some kind of postal treaty that was negotiated in the 60s or whatever, when China was a poor country. It's no longer a poor country, but it still gets this preferential postal, international postal system treatment. So what that means, if I just went, okay, I shipped something to Taiwan, to the development office for our company, a box, 3-pound box this big, it cost me like $80. That was the cheapest option for me to ship this.
And when I ship stuff, it's like $3.
Yeah, they can ship. Okay, Chinese companies can ship under this treaty, can ship individual parcels to Americans for almost for free,
and the cost is then
and then it's put onto the U.S. taxpayer. That's the people who pay the postal service to pay for the delivery of those packages. So that doesn't make any sense that a country should be able to, like, I get whatever, maybe there was an idea that developing countries get a special treatment, and that part has finished long ago with China, but it also means something for Americans. It means that the cost of ordering a $2 thing for your kitchen is actually borne by the American taxpayer, because they're paying all the postage. Isn't just not paid. The postage is paid, okay, but it's paid by the taxpayer. So someone's paying it, and it should be paid by the people who are buying the postage to send the thing to America, not by the American taxpayer. But that's a policy choice. And I don't know how it got this long with China being able to be classified as a poor country that can ship stuff for free. But there are things about the whole situation that needed to change. But punishing Americans for making things in a country that has high level of expertise of making awesome stuff for the low prices Americans expect to pay for them isn't something that American companies should be penalized for, because we do the work here. We develop the stuff here. We do the marketing here. Google, for God's sake, we pay that Google more per sale than we pay the factory to make our product. Okay. So there's lots of money flowing around in America, but the actual physical making of the thing, that's only like a fifth of the things that need to occur to have a business, the physical product. So I don't know that even the physical product, those people, trust me, they make less than all of the people in America selling the product. The store makes more. The distributor who just takes it, puts it in the warehouse and passes it on, they make more than the factory
guy
times
at the cash
5.
register. Yeah.
So
interesting.
So the whole, and even at 30%, it's not like no one's going to pay it. Certainly, let's say the factory's not paying it. I'm paying. It's coming. You're going to tax me. I'm going to have less profit. So the government's going to tax me less because I've made less money, but they've already double taxed me. Okay. And then it's regressive in that it makes the product more expensive. So that people are paying a tax on that, which they don't understand as a tax because I've raised the price, and everyone's made less money along the way. So no, it's not rational to do that. And it's not going to change our behavior. We aren't just going to tomorrow say, yeah, we're going to start making, look, I'll tell you this, even in Taiwan, we have a development office, or factory does in Taiwan. We looked at making the whole product in Taiwan. They looked at making the whole thing like a year ago in Taiwan. They said 3 to 4 times more expensive. Let's say 3 times more to make it even in Taiwan, which is like a medium manufacturing cost country. So if it's 3 times more in Taiwan, and then even if we made it in America, let's say we made it in America. Okay, what? We need to have use injection machines, have experts in molds. We need to do PCB, like soldering, like hand soldering of certain components in America. Then we need to order still the motor and probably the PCB and the LED lights. Like, you think we're going to get LED lights like for 10 cents each? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We'd still be importing all the components, and then we'd be paying Americans to assemble this low cost electronics. Doesn't make that much sense.
I think that's the answer. I think you buy a small town in like West Virginia and turn it into a factory town, and everybody's just going to be there making LEDs by hand.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I mean, if you see, it's not like, people also think, oh, in China, there's I've been in 100 factories. It's not I think even a factory in America, it's not like a pleasant
absolutely not.
Type of employment, but it's not in China, the conditions are, I guess I've seen some like TikTok video of, like a clothing factory where there's like kids and they outsource third layer outsource the garment manufacturing. This is not how it is for probably 98% of the things that get made in China. It's normal.
I think what you're talking about, like, so for example, I went to the Macintosh, the audio factory.
Oh, yeah.
That's upstate. That's a beautiful factory, and it's like an actual factory. They're going to be making things. Or I went to a switch factory outside of Chicago, and they make switches for submarines and cars and everything. And if you have a high end car, you put their switch in because it's rated to 1 million presses as opposed to like, I don't know, 2000. And those factories weren't like the ones I saw in China. I'm familiar with, I've been into Foxconn, and I've also been to another factory that was making USB keys. And it wasn't neither was pretty by any stretch of the imagination. Foxconn was a little bit better. It looked nicer. It was more well lit. But yeah, I mean, the idea that, yeah, you can absolutely make high-end electronics. You can do pick and place machines in the States, but you have to, first off, you have to get all that supply. You have to get all those, the PCBs, as you said, you have to get all the circuitry, all the electronics, and even some of the power supplies and all the other good stuff. So it seems like pretty like ridiculous idea that you can start building auto blows in Cleveland.
No, we can't. And then imagine even the sleeve, even the rubber sleeve. There's a lady, she just figured out for us how to make our sleeve out of silicone.
Mm-hmm.
She's an expert in silicone injection, and who needs to do silicone injection in America? Only medical applications. And those people are cost for all the workers that are going to be expert in, and it's going to be like super clean, like special clean room, all that. You can wash your silicone sleeve before you use it. It's clean. You can't give someone a medical silicone with like a germ on it, right? It's just a totally different environment. And Americans also, they don't want to pay. I don't think they didn't. The strange thing is they didn't even realize, people don't even, because we still had things to sell, because the way that they did this was spaced in such a way that they knew, they kind of got the word out that this was going to happen. So people like us and everyone else front loaded inventory. Instead of having $600,000 of inventory on hand, we had 1.2 million, let's say we had. But then we started to get to the end of that. So people didn't feel it in stores yet. And then we went back and then made it like 30%, which now I saw Walmart is going to increase their prices, and everyone's making a stink like they're doing something wrong. You can't they fight people over pennies. Walmart does. So 30% increase, of course they're going to pass it on to people. So we're going to see it soon.
So to maintain the premise of the podcast, are you okay? Are you going to be able to come out of this?
Yeah.
Is this survivable?
Yeah. Now at 145%, we would focus our efforts outside of the United States. We would have lost all of our U.S. retail and distribution, but we would keep selling online. We would just raise the price kind of slowly, like boiling a frog. We'd have to just raise it. I would just have made less money. At 30%, I'd say things are back to normal, but we will make less money and people will pay more. I'll make a little bit less money and people will just pay more. The problem is that it's going to have a societal wide effect because the people aren't getting more income. Like their employer isn't like, yes, now that there's duties on things and you must consume probably $4,000 or $5,000 a year of stuff, so we're going to increase your salary.
Here's a little extra.
Obviously, people will, over time, if these kind of duties stay on products, which is the normal things everyone needs to live like a nice life, people need to be paid more money and everyone's prices will go up. So clearly there will be inflation to pay for the 30% that's on all the China stuff. At least 30. It's 30 plus more for many other categories.
Well, actually, this is actually really valuable, and I think this is an interesting. This is an unusual podcast for us because it's like a news story. But I think you coming on here and basically telling it as it's happening is actually really, really helpful to a lot of folks. It actually will help people understand what the heck's going on. If you're selling fairly expensive sex toys, I can only imagine what somebody trying to sell, I don't know, housewares or water bottles is dealing with right now.
Yeah, the margins in our industry made it survivable. 30%, to me, 30% is like, okay, we'll add some money, we'll make a little less money. But 30%, yeah, if you were selling like whatever, like, customized like tape measures or like this kind of stuff, promotional goods, and you were like, 12% margin, and you have people selling, there's many, many, many industries, probably the majority of them, where that 30% is already a fatal blow because they can't just raise their prices. And there's people who are locked into contracts. I don't have contracts with people. I can call my people I deal with and say, the price is higher. Sorry, buy it or don't buy it. I don't know what to tell you. But when you're dealing with the Targets and Walmarts and Sam's Clubs of the universe, they have you locked into these contracts where they just expect you to supply them or lose money. They don't really care. And a lot of people were locked into these. They thought, wow, I'm amazing. I got into Sam's Club or whatever. Okay, that's all was probably fine until you're locked into supplying them at a price that financially ruins you, or they never buy from you again, or they sue you, or I don't know what they're going to do to those people.
Yeah, well, it's madness. Well, thank you, Brian, for sharing this. This has been fascinating.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm
right.
happy to help people understand what's actually happening, because even if you read the news, it's not that clear what this actually means for people.
Yeah, this is going up as soon as possible. All right. Brian Sloan, AutoBlow, thank you for joining us. This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.